Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Spilled Beans. My name's Duncan Goldie. My guest this week is Dr Benedict Evans, who is the managing director of a venture capital firm called InHealth Ventures. Ben has got a really interesting background. He, as the title suggests, trained as a medical doctor. He undertook core surgical training with a focus on trauma and orthopaedics. Ben's got that really good blend of experience, obviously getting a deeper understanding over the value add for a lot of these businesses, more so than just your average venture capital firm. And he's really able to see the kind of implication and the practicality side of a new innovative piece of technology within the healthcare industry. So really interesting to hear his story, so I enjoyed it and I hope you guys do too. Ben, hi. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me on the podcast today. How are you?
I'm very good, Duncan. It's great to be speaking to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the time. So, tell me whereabouts in the world are you right now?
I'm in lovely, very hot, sunny West Ealing at the moment. So working from home and looking forward to a vacation in a couple of weeks' time in the West Country.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, it would be nice to get out and enjoy some of that nice weather. What's the lockdown situation like for you? Have you been in the same place the whole time, or have you decided to kind of make a new base anywhere else?
Yeah, I've largely been home over the last probably month or so. I've been going back into the office in central London, and I think that's both for my own sanity and also just because it's given me the chance to catch up with colleagues and so on, and just get into London and re-experience some of the energy of the capital. And it's been interesting to see, really how it's gone from being very quiet about a month and a half ago to I was there early this week, and it feels like it's getting back to something like what it was like before lockdown. So a lot busier, and hopefully we can all start to kind of get back to offices in a safe way. But certainly it's something that I've missed, that opportunity just to meet colleagues, meet people in general. And I guess it's a big part of the venture investor job, and it's something I really enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. I think the sort of camaraderie and everything like that, the sort of cultural aspect of work has definitely been put on hold for quite some time for everyone, I feel. So it's nice to see that, particularly in somewhere like London, which is quite populous. Obviously, it's nice to hear that that's going back to normal in a good way. So fingers crossed it continues. So obviously, you mentioned there that you're in a venture capital business now, InHealth Ventures. Tell me, I mean, you obviously come from quite an interesting background, coming through the sort of medical field yourself, and then going into venture capital and investment. That's not an easy switch to make. It's not a normal career path. Tell me, how did that happen?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and it certainly wasn't something that was necessarily a plan when I struck out to leave clinical practice. So I studied in London at UCL, and then went on to practice within London and just outside for around 5 years, and was going down the surgical route. So I was starting the orthopaedic specialist training process, and really enjoyed my time in medicine, and really enjoyed a number of aspects of clinical practice, but had always really been interested in other career opportunities and other interesting aspects, particularly related to business, and so made a decision to just test out the waters and understand what was out there. Not necessarily with a belief that would be a permanent switch, but it felt like at the time I was significantly younger than I am now, and it was a time to try and look to take chances, and certainly felt that time was maybe not going to be around for forever. So I did a few things, all within healthcare, across a period of about 5 years. So worked in management consulting, McKinsey, working in London, and on the east coast of the US, primarily working with healthcare providers during that period. I worked at an early stage healthcare company that was actually a spin out from McKinsey called Objective Health, and really cut my teeth there, really learning about some of both the exciting aspects of early stage companies within the US at that point that were looking to really drive change within healthcare towards a more value-based approach was very much the focus, and has been the focus within US healthcare for a while. But also, learning about the nuts and bolts of really being a part of a smaller team, developing products, and focusing on sales, particularly to hospitals and healthcare organizations, and really realizing how tough and challenging that is. And it's a lesson that's stayed with me till today, and certainly very much a focus as we look at companies through InHealth Ventures. Went on to work at St George's Hospital as a manager for a period, heading up clinical transformation, and that was back in London, in South London, Tooting. And there, again, focus on the analytics side of healthcare, using data to help clinicians work differently, understand the cost of care and decisions we're making around that, clinical outcomes related decision making, and this concept of unwarranted variability that occurs between different types of doctors. And so it's a fascinating period, learned a huge amount around how challenging it is to really operate as a manager with the NHS, what it's like to be on the other side of the table when you have health IT and other types of vendors coming to sell to you, and that decision-making process you go through as a customer. And it was a great chance just to really have an impact on what I think is very important, really how the NHS is able to continue to deliver an effective service to patients. And so got to that point, and as I say, I think where my heart lay was that early stage side of the industry. That's what I've really enjoyed when I was over in the US, experiencing that, meeting people both on the investor and startup side in that area, and felt that investing in early stage companies would probably play to my strengths in a way that being a startup maybe didn't. I'm one of those people that I think likes to focus on a number of different things at once. I like to be a supporter and an advisor to some of the CEOs we work with, and I really feel that the experience I've developed has enabled me to hopefully have a decent perspective, both from the US and UK point of view, as to how you can build significant health tech companies. So that's where I am now. InHealth Ventures, it's a $50 million fund. We invest primarily at seed, Series A stage, investing in the UK and the US, and very much focus on those same aspects that have been the thread that run through my career. Companies that are using data and analytics to deliver lower cost, better access, and improved outcomes for patients within healthcare.
Yeah, fantastic. I mean, it's such an interesting skill set that I suppose you're able to bring to potential, new businesses and stuff like that. I mean, do you see that your own clinical experience and knowledge, I mean, how that's obviously not the average investor, when being approached by a health tech startup, quite often they're just wanting to see the kind of evidence-based solutions already. I mean, how much more experience are you able to give, and how much deeper understanding are you able to demonstrate to each of these businesses?
Well, I mean, first thing to say is I think there are a great group of clinician investors out there now, both in the UK and the US, and that's a great number, and I think it's a really good thing, to your point. I mean, I think most funds benefit from having, in the same way as companies, having a breadth balance of different skill sets and experiences and opinions, and I think the clinical perspective really does a couple of things. First of all, you are probably better able to put yourself in the shoes of the user when that user is a doctor, a nurse, another allied health professional. I think fundamentally understand some of the challenges they have, and how they think about using different platforms, different solutions, and what's important to them, and ultimately what drives user engagement. So I think that's the first thing. I think probably the second thing is more broadly when it comes to interacting with different stakeholders across healthcare, be it clinicians, be it customers more broadly, administrators in the hospitals and other healthcare organisations, and we do primarily focus on B2B companies at InHealth, and a broader range of stakeholders beyond that. I mean, I think it enables you to have a level of particularly as you get to the more technical end of some of these solutions, just have a level of understanding and ability to evaluate some of those particularly life sciences solutions that are becoming increasingly complex. So I'd say those two aspects first and foremost. But as I say, I mean, my work colleague Lavanya at InHealth, and she doesn't have a healthcare background, and it's fantastic to have her outside perspective when we evaluate companies that maybe challenge some of the biases I've picked up during that period.
Yeah, definitely. And I guess around that sort of, you've obviously got a good experience. You can see where, the patient is going to be able to benefit through the use of innovation. And essentially that sounds like that's why you got into, working with these innovative businesses in the first place. Are you seeing that, the pandemic that we're going through at the moment, there's obviously a lot of businesses which are being formed or diversifying their offering in order to be able to solve more solutions for the NHS or private health sectors in the US, for example? Are you seeing more and more of these businesses coming through? And I suppose a second question is, are you finding that it's more and more competitive for them to receive that tangible investment now because of the volume of them that are going through these rounds of funding?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of things to say on that. I think, first of all, clearly the impact that digital solutions within healthcare have had, particularly around provision of remote care with the telehealth, remote diagnostics, and so on, had a big moment through this crisis, and they've been able to have impact and maintain the ability to deliver care across health systems, and so that's been really exciting, phenomenal. And I think it's been a long time coming in many ways. There've been a lot of barriers historically to some of these types of solutions, and I think particularly from shall we say the more experienced cohort of clinician users and administrators, just a lack of willingness to engage with some of those products. What we've seen is really a forcing mechanism. GPs, specialists, whether in outpatients or in the clinical surgery, have had to employ some of these products, and have actually found them to be both usable, helpful, and actually value enhancing around how they interact with patients. And so I think that's really exciting. And I think what that creates is, and what we've seen that create in speaking to portfolio CEOs, is very much a step change in the willingness of customers to actually try these different products. And I think that's again, I think that's something that we will see continue as we think about how we operate in healthcare within a world where we have to continue to be socially distanced, increasingly probably deliver care outside of the hospital, even inside the home. I think clearly data-driven digital solutions are going to be fundamental to that. I think you are seeing companies being started. I think you're seeing, obviously, with the more general focus on healthcare globally, you're seeing a lot of entrepreneurs who maybe wouldn't have thought of it before, identifying problems, challenges, and looking to start companies in this area. And so certainly we are seeing, I wouldn't say there's necessarily a a massive increase in deals because there are other factors at play in the macroeconomy that mean that probably there's still a level of uncertainty, and people are still waiting to see how things pan out in terms of the second wave and so on. But I think what it does mean is that the impact is certainly, in terms of investment, in terms of valuation, has been less significant than maybe we would have imagined 3 to 4 months ago. So I think that's great for founders, and I think what you will have is really hopefully a very positive, virtuous cycle of more entrepreneurs, more investors, and therefore some great companies being started, and we certainly see real opportunities. Interestingly, particularly in the US, where you have a confluence of factors. You've got obviously the challenge that hospitals are managing in terms of delivering care outside of dealing with patients who have COVID. You see significant amounts of people that have lost their jobs, which means they've lost their insurance, and therefore a need to work out how we actually deliver care to those people. And I think that's clearly a factor at a central policy level, but it's also an area where bottom up early stage companies can assist. And I think the third thing is more generally this, as I said, this future whereby hospitals will continue to be the highest risk areas when it comes to potential risk of contracting coronavirus. There is now something we've been talking about for a long time, I think, in healthcare, but it feels like it's now actually going to be accelerated, this idea that the hospital, which has always been a pretty high cost center, and therefore driving costs more generally within economies for healthcare, we'll see hospitals becoming very much hyper acute centers where you have an ICU, you have operating theaters, and you really only go there if you have an immediate and urgent problem to be addressed. And for the most part, there will be a combination of virtual and community-based care, diagnostic, therapeutic, that becomes very much the norm. And I think, again, digital technologies will really underpin that new normal, which I think is really, it's really great. It's great for patients because it improves access to care for them. It's great because I think it creates a level of disruption, which means that new companies will be starting and big companies will be built. And I think it's exciting from the point of view of the potential impact it can have on the cost of care as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the benefit to the patient is going to be exponential over the next 5 years, even shorter than that. Just to be able to, like you say, that access to care, the geographical access to care as well. If you're living remotely and everything like that, you have just the same access as everybody else. So it's fantastic that technology is going to be able to do that for the whole industry, and obviously free up the time for those doctors to be able to treat the patients that need it the most. So that's fantastic. So I guess if you're an investor or an entrepreneur listening to this podcast, obviously we know the pain points that talking about the NHS specifically are facing. And if you feel that you have a solution and you're looking, you just need some investment behind you in order to get this product off the ground, how do you advise sort of going through that journey initially to be able to get to that Series A of funding and be able to approach someone like yourself and have a better chance at having a successful round of investment?
So I think at the most basic level, it is first of all around what we look for in healthcare companies and companies generally, regardless of the industry you're operating in as investors. So it will always come down to the strength of the team and their ability to execute on the targets they set, the market in which they're operating, and really the the problem they're solving and the solution they have to address that problem. And so first and foremost, as a founder, you need to think about those three aspects. And particularly, I'd say, the team aspect, and early on, are you, coming back to the discussion on balance of skills, are you in a position whereby as a team you have a good combination of commercial, technical, clinical, if needed, insights, and are you a team that has a level of trust and confidence in each other that you can succeed, and that you'll be able to and a desire to stick around and go through the challenges and ups and downs that exist when it comes to starting a company up and taking it on a long journey to hopefully an exit. I think from a problem point of view, it's often easy. We see a lot of companies that develop phenomenal technologies and then try to force fit that to a problem within healthcare, and that doesn't often end up well, or at least, in the best case, you're going to burn a lot of capital trying to then pivot and work out exactly where the problem is that you may have missed initially and need to focus on. So I think stress testing that concept around the problem you're solving, and therefore speaking to the users, and deeply understanding their perspective on it, how painful that problem is, what the pull demand for it is, what the willingness to pay for a solution would be, is really critical as well. And I think probably the third thing then is just thinking about that market. I mean, I think it's easy within healthcare, particularly if you're a doctor or a nurse or a physio or any other allied health professional, to see problems everywhere. And because there are a ton of problems in healthcare, it's often said to be generally broken. I think it's a tough place to work, and so it's easy to fix on problems that are very real and very important and very painful, but actually they're pretty local, or the market really stops at the UK, for example, because it's very NHS orientated. And certainly what we believe, what we've learned over time, is that the UK health system, the NHS, is an incredible place in which to build an initial proof of concept, an initial offering, and there is the ability to scale there, and have a lot of good, have a lot of impact, do a lot of good, and grow to a decent sized company. But from the point of view of a venture sized outcome, and being very very direct about it, what we're looking for is getting 5 to 10 to 20 times our investment for it to be a successful one, because we know that only a small portion of those investments will actually succeed to a significant exit. You do need to be thinking globally, and so you do need to think not just about how this problem, no matter how significant it is, and no matter how good our solution is, how this problem scales, and that's both, does the market for it exist in other countries, but also, practically speaking, how can we apply that solution in other countries, and what will be the barriers to doing that? And so inevitably you iterate as a founder, and you learn new things, and you end up maybe doing something quite different to what you had started out doing. But I think that work up front, thinking about all those aspects and thinking about how you can potentially go to market is really important. And the final thing I'd say is, particularly with the current environment, we've been speaking to portfolio CEOs in the US, UK, and hospital and other healthcare leaders across geographies, and the consistent message you hear is we are incredibly busy. There's not a whole lot of money flying around to invest in new things, and therefore, if you're coming to us and saying we can solve a problem for you over the next 3 years, and you might see the ROI on it for the next 5 years, and it no matter how clear and strong that narrative is, people haven't really necessarily got a whole lot of time to engage in those types of discussions right now. So it is, in general, you want to be thinking about, particularly as you get to a Series A level, how can I provide a very clear calculation on return on investment, not just clinically, but in terms of cost, and one that is rapid. So, 3 to 4x return on investment in the next 12 months. Those are the things I think that are going to be compelling right now. And so, that work, which is challenging work to try and get those early customers and get them to believe in you, despite the fact that you hadn't necessarily got those types of observations for them. I think it's useful to be very focused on understanding how you're going to achieve, and working with those early customers around how you're going to achieve an output that really delivers clarity on that, because that's super helpful as you think about building out the pipeline more broadly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's fantastic advice to give anyone listening. So, look, we're almost out of time, but if anyone does have any sort of further questions around, just wanting to find out a little bit more about yourself or InHealth and how you might be able to work together, for example, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
So you can get through to us via the website. There's a portal where you can leave details. Equally, you can email me, benedict.evans@inhealthventures.com, and always happy to chat with early stage founders or anyone that's really interested in healthcare. And so, yeah, please do get in touch.
Yeah, definitely. Well, look, we'll put the links that you've just mentioned there in the summary of the podcast, so make it as easy as possible for people to get in touch. But it's absolutely fascinating to hear your insight, Ben, from such a sort of all-round experienced professional like yourself to be able to give that advice to people. I'm sure will be highly valuable to them. So look, thank you very much for taking the time to chat with me. Really interesting. I'll let you get back to Ealing and enjoying the sunshine, or hopefully trying to stay cool. But yeah, look, thank you so much again, and I'm sure there'll be lots of conversations that come off the back of this. So really interesting to see how your portfolio grows.
Awesome. Thanks, Duncan. Enjoy your cafe in Puglia.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a bit warm here as well.
That espresso looks very good.
It was. It's got me talking now anyway. Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Ben. Have a great day. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
So that's a wrap for us this week then, guys. Thanks very much to Ben for taking the time to talk us through how to position a kind of health tech business for a round of funding and what investors particularly like to see. We've obviously had an episode with Rohit a couple of episodes ago talking about this from an American perspective. But whilst Ben does work internationally, it's good to hear kind of what more NHS specific stuff as well for any UK listeners. So very, very interesting conversation and hopefully really valuable to some people as well. So if you do have any other information, obviously Ben's contact details and company website are in the summary of this podcast. My contact details